Tryphina Dube Takaza. She's presenting a paper on strategic position of small grain on the African Continental Free Trade Area agenda for addressing Zimbabwe food security challenges, the case of smallholder farmers, perceptions of pearl millet production in Lemphane district. Tryphina is a doctor of philosophy of agribusiness management student with Women's University in Africa, located in Zimbabwe, focusing on value chain development. She holds a master's of science degree in animal breeding and biology, a master's in disaster management, Bachelor of Science degree in agricultural management, a certificate in value chain development. And her research interests are value chain development with an emphasis on marketed linkages and crops and livestock, strengthening of input and output market systems. She is also interested in sustainable crop production, agricultural technology adoption, soil conservation, disaster management, climate change, climate smart agricultural practices, food security, livelihood, farmers' resilience. She has a passion in capacity building of producer groups of participatory value chain analysis and development. And so without further ado, let's listen to her presentation.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tryphina Dube Takaza. I shall present our study entitled Strategic Position of Small Grain on the African Continent Free Trade Area Agenda for Addressing Zimbabwe Food Security Challenges, the case of smallholder farmers' perceptions on pearl millet production in Lemphane district. The outline of my presentation is I will start from introduction, go to background of study, research objectives and questions, methodology, findings or discussions, conclusion up to recommendations. Small grain plays a crucial role in Africa's food security for most African countries. For this study, the small grains that we're going to be discussing are the pearl millet, finger millet, and sorghum. Sustainable Development Goals 2 advocates for the attainment of zero hunger by 2030 with focus on sustainable agriculture to achieve food security. In semi-arid regions of Zimbabwe, smallholder farmers have faced challenges in the productive utilization of the land for large-scale production of indigenous small grain cereal crops such as sorghum, finger millet, and pearl millet. Most of these farmers find themselves with no choice but to grow maize, which is not favorable to the climatic conditions and soil types in the semi-arid regions that includes study area of Lemphane district, which is also characterized by erratic rainfall patterns. Markets and value addition opportunities of these small grain cereals have been a challenge to the farmers in Zimbabwe and Southern Africa. Even with the introduction of African Continental Free Trade Area, the address of the issues around production and marketing of these seem not to have gained visible interest in their agendas. Indigenous cereal crops play an important role in Zimbabwe with regard to food security and their position in trade issues for economic development and fostering improved livelihoods. The regions 4 and 5 of Zimbabwe are ideal for the cultivation of small grain cereal crops, including pearl millet, as these can withstand adverse weather conditions and poor soil types. The rainfall pattern in these two regions can be as low as 650 millimeters, and the temperatures can be as high as 40 degrees Celsius, and the soils can be from sandy to loamy sandy. In spite of this, they've had less preference compared to maize in production and trade by smallholder farmers. Pale millet, like other traditional cereal crops, have been in existence for decades, but do not seem to have a good market share and significant growth within the global and regional trade space. Usachia 2022 states that the current pace of trade growth within Africa has remained slow, necessitating visible measures to be taken to facilitate expanded African trade and hence the launch of the AfCFTA in 2019. Currently, there are 55 member states that have signed the AfCFTA agreement, including Zimbabwe. AfCFTA is an AU Agenda 2063 flagship project designed to create an integrated continental market for goods and services, as well as for accelerating the attainment of the goals and aspirations of the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. It aims to create a single continental market for goods and services, harmonizing different trade liberalization processes currently occurring in the continent and boosting regional integration. Furthermore, its focus is, number one, to eliminate tariffs and non-tariff barriers to trade in goods progressively. Secondly, to liberalize trade in services progressively. Thirdly, to cooperate on investment, intellectual property rights, and competition policy. Fourthly, to cooperate on all trade-related areas, including customs matters, where farmers can have a benefit of getting free duty when they import or export their produce. It is important to build the capacity of traders in smallholder farmer sectors so that they realize their exploitation of such trade agreements. It is against this background that the study was carried out to add literature on the role of AfCFTA in the production and selling of pale millet for alleviation of food insecurity and policy influence through the results of the study. On the research objectives, I will dwell on research questions that will answer the research objectives. The first question is, what are the farmers' perception in the decline of production of pale millet? Secondly, how is the relationship between small grain cereal crops and African Continental Free Trade Area agenda on addressing Zimbabwe food security challenges? Thirdly, which strategies can be used to strengthen the involvement of smallholder farmers in AfCFTA agenda for addressing food security challenges in Zimbabwe? The methodology of the study adopted the interpretive paradigm as it enabled the researchers to understand the viewpoints of the participants. Through qualitative approach, data was collected from August to October 2022. Semi-structured interviews were used to collect data from 3 aggregates officers, 3 local leaders that included village heads and the councillor. There were also 24 smallholder farmers, and there were 4 focus group discussions conducted from the Lupanda, Ward 22. The researchers were able to gather in-depth information on the perceptions of the smallholder farmers in the production and marketing of pale millet. Thematic data analysis was used where patterns were identified and analyzed to explore the underlying meanings. Secondary data through policy documents, published articles, and reports was used to complement the findings on the role of AfCFTA in providing the farmers with opportunities for regional and global competitive economic integration. On the findings, farmers face challenges in the production of pale millet that included lack of resources, which include machinery. We would know that in maize production, there is combined harvesters that are used for harvesting. But with pearl millet, farmers have to harvest using their hands, that is manual. So it becomes a big labor issue. And then on labor, there's also labor for chasing the birds that eat the crop at harvest time. And there's also a problem of seed. The farmers normally use landrace or retained seed. The retained seed is the seed that they use to plant year after year. After they harvest, they plant that seed. The following year, they do the same thing. There is another challenge again for negative attitudes on the crop by various stakeholders. There is also lack of commercial value of the crop and the absence of policies that promote the marketability of pearl millet. Lack of support from the government, the private sector, and regional organizations like AfCFTA on the development of new small grain crop varieties. These crop varieties include Okashama K2, PM-V1, and SDM V89004. In Zimbabwe, these crop varieties are bred by breeders like Icrisat and Matoko Research Station. Yes, they can breed these new crop varieties, but unfortunately, when you go to seed houses, these varieties are not sold. The farmers can look for these varieties and not find them. As a result, that's why the farmers end up using retained seed that will reduce the yields. There were also strong indications that farmers' perceptions were on the decline with regard to the production and marketing of pearl millet. Researchers identified weaknesses such as high production costs resulting from high labor costs with low output returns in terms of time and lack of processing technology. Majority of smallholder farmers were not aware of the role of AfCFTA in the production and selling of pearl millet for alleviation of food insecurity, in which they would enjoy the benefits from duty-free trade, wider markets, and purchase of new crop varieties at a low cost from other AfCFTA member states. The study would therefore conclude that there were high production costs in terms of high labor costs with low output returns per time. There was lack of processing technologies leading to low outputs and poor end user product. There was also negative smallholder farmers as well as consumer perceptions leading to less production and sales on the produce. There was also limited or lack of support by the state, researchers, private sector, and cooperating partners in promoting the entire value chain of this crop. Despite the introduction of AfCFTA, the address of the issues around production and marketing of pearl millet seem not to have gained visible interest in their agendas. There is therefore recommendations of the start of using improved knowledge and skills impartation in crop production and food security issues. There is also a need to improve policies on the land tenure. Farmers need secure land rights, more incentives to allow sustainable use of the land. The government and related stakeholders should make a concerted effort to support the production, processing, distribution, and sale of indigenous cereal crops by soliciting cooperating partners in the private sector. And they need to have reasonable awareness on the operations and the benefits of AfCFTA. Because from the studies, some smallholder farmers are indicating that they've never heard of AfCFTA, and those that heard, they were not so sure on the role of AfCFTA. Let the smallholder farmers' voices be heard by being included in the relevant AfCFTA agendas. Thank you so much for your interest.
Thank you, Tryphina. Very interesting presentation.
Thank you.
I found it interesting. Why do farmers still opt to grow maize which is not favorable to climate conditions in Zimbabwe, and even still.
Okay. Thank you very much. The farmers still opt to grow maize, which is not favorable to the climatic conditions of Zimbabwe, because maize is mainly supported by the government. And besides being supported by the government, these crops, they've got labor issues, which means they are not, the government is not supporting them, the farmers, because it does not provide these combined harvesters for the farmers to use to harvest the maize, the pale millet, compared to maize. So it takes them time to harvest because they are going to use their hands. And besides that, this pale millet is normally affected by the birds. So when it harvest time, the birds come and eat the seed. Unlike maize, once you grow your maize, you are just waiting to harvest. There is no other pest like birds that will disturb your maize.
I see. Audience, do you have some questions for Tryphina?
What a beautiful presentation, Tryphina. It's been a while. We met somewhere in Costa Rica, if you still remember, for a IFAMA conference. Yes, I wanted to check, how did you sample your farmers? Which strategy did you use? Because I see you have a lot of participants in your study, and you did not justify how you selected those participants. I was just curious about that that aspect. Thank you.
Okay. The sampling procedure that was used, it was purposive sampling, where we were sampling farmers only that were growing pale millet. So it was purposive. And from the purposive sampling, we're doing random sampling from those farmers that were purposely looked, who were into pale millet production.
Okay, thank you.
Richard has a question.
Yes, please. Okay, Tryphina, thank you very much for the presentation. My own has to do with, I saw strategic position of small grain. Is it widely accepted small grain, or the small grain concept was developed for the purposes of this research?
Come again, Richard.
I'm saying that I saw that the title is Strategic Position of Small Grain, and the others follows. So when I saw the small grain, I was asking myself, is it a widely accepted name, or it was developed for the purposes of this study? Small grain. I was asking which one is small grain? Is it millet? Is it what? I was asking myself.
In fact, small grain, pale millet is included under small grain. But for this study, we're focusing on the pale millet.
Okay, so you're focusing on pale millet.
Yes, we're focusing on pale millet.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
What is the nexus correlation between smallholder farmers and the AfCFTA in promoting food security and livelihoods?
Okay, thank you. In fact, the smallholder farmers can produce small grain. And once they've produced small grain, it will be easy for them to correlate with the AfCFTA, which they can trade and get free trade duties. So what is important is the four smallholder farmers producing more grain. And once they produce more grain, then they can trade that grain through the AfCFTA agenda, trade agenda.
I see. Do we have some other questions for Tryphina?
Catherine, can I come in again?
Sure.
Okay, so this is just something I was thinking about when you were presenting. These are small-scale farmers, small grain kind of farmers who don't have much knowledge about even national discourse. So my question is, were you expecting them to have knowledge about AfCFTA, which is a continental trade agreement that even at a policy level, some are not even much endowed knowledge on AfCFTA. But these are small-scale farmers in a province in Zimbabwe. Were you expecting them to have much knowledge about that?
In fact,
Continental trade
yes.
agreement.
In fact, these small farmers, they might not have had the knowledge, but you want to promote them to produce more. Once they have that knowledge that there is AfCFTA, then they can produce, being motivated by this AfCFTA. Although AfCFTA is still new, so I want them to also change their perceptions and produce more, so that they also benefit from AfCFTA. And from the start, there were recommendations that there's need for awareness campaigns, so that the small grains would also be aware. The small grain farmers can also be aware of the AfCFTA.
Okay, so let me ask from you, has the Zimbabwe government, put up a policy or regulation to ensure that whatever gains is coming from AfCFTA is directly benefited by the farmers? I'm looking at AfCFTA as a continental trade agreement that is at a higher level. Unless by Zimbabwe government will strategize, how will farmers' knowledge about it really let them have the gains of AfCFTA? That is what I'm thinking about.
Thanks so much for your contribution. Since AfCFTA is still new, especially even in Zimbabwe, they still need for vigorous awareness campaigns. Even farmers that are commercial farmers, they still need that awareness as much as the smallholder farmers would. So they still need from policymakers to make sure they include farmers in their agendas, in their workshops, they include these farmers, so that their also voices will also be heard.
Okay, thank you.
Latse has a question.
Tryphina, my question is in the same ballpark as Dr. Richard. I just wanted to know, you've mentioned that there's still need to implement the awareness actions. I just want to know who would be reaching out to these smallholder farmers, because like Richard mentioned, that they at smallholder farmers, and the link between smallholder farmers and an regional document is very far reach. So who would be articulating this to the smallholder farmers? Who will be reaching out to the smallholder farmers? Do any of your recommendations suggest that?
Okay. In fact, I suggested that the government would reach out to the smallholder farmers. In fact, in Zimbabwe, in every ward, there is an agri-tax officer, the one who teaches farmers about farming, crop production. Those officers, they stay in the ward with the farmers. So those are the ones that can assist the farmers in those awareness campaigns at grassroots level, because they are always with the farmers.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions for Tryphina? Okay. Thank you, Tryphina.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.